about to share is the seal up of our Master Food Certification Program. And we've tried to answer as many of our questions that are necessary for us as individuals to make solid decisions to move on with protecting our lives with our plate, taking ownership and just really being mindful of who we are, because of course who we are is what we ate. So, you know, if we live in a lot of fear, then the foods that brought us into a lot of fear is chicken, the number one. Especially these hormone chickens that we've been consuming now for the past 40 years. And the way they raise them in cages, you know, they're penned up, and the way they peck at each other, you know, the way they grow up in a situation and then being slaughtered. Not just the chicken, but the cows, they know when they're coming for them. You know, they could feel the vibe. So a lot of this is instilled in these animal instincts are instilled in us, and we go ahead, you know, and live in a level of fear and disharmony with each other based on who we are, because as we know, we are what we eat. One of the biggest reasons why they have been able to sell us on eating animals is the whole issue of B-12. The B-12 issue is the most burning issue that we have that have really corralled us in pens, like we are, you know, animals ready for the slaughterhouse. And obviously we are ready for the slaughterhouse because we are now killing ourselves personally. They don't have to set it up for us to be slaughtered by their clans. We are clanning and killing ourselves individually. So the B-12 issue is really on the top of our plate, should be on top of everybody's plate. And again, it is tied to this issue of animals. They say that since there are no B-12 in plant foods, we must be eating animals, consuming animals to get our B-12. That's the big justifications. And when you look at something like B-12 and all of the nutritional analysis that they use to justify or market, you know, their business, we see that it's all about that and nothing else, business. It's about profit and loss. You know, for me, it's the bankers who have taken over the food basket, whether the bankers, you know, are on Wall Street or you know, or they're down the corner, you know, in your supermarket, your grocery store, peddling you junk, garbage, peddling you death, then you know what I'm talking about. So for them, it's strictly about profit and loss, not about how the food is going to make you feel, think, look, or whatever. You know, and we see the wreck that we're in today. So the way they arrive at how much B-12 the human body needs, they analyze the excrement of people who eat animals. And they say you excrete so much B-12, you need to replenish that much. So when we look at that and we see the loads of B-12 that we're consuming, we have been consuming in these animal flesh, we see that you look at our excrement, you know, the way they're looking at it, and you see that in our excrement, 95% of the B-12 that we consume based on the SAD diet, the standard American diet, which they have definitely put they threw that in the trash bin. But yet many of us are still eating like, you know, the pyramid, the standard American diet is our fare, you know, the SAD diet. So that situation basically there's been a revolution against that, you know, and it's been since the mid-1800s, 1850s, the Christian revolt of all things in the US, you know, against the SAD diet, the standard American diet, you know, so hence came forth the Adventists and a whole bunch of the Mormons and, you know, the Mennonites, you know, there's a whole gang of them that became vegetarians, you know, back then. That was the standard term. And for them, their main argument is, thou shalt not kill. That's it. So with them, vegetarianism ends after that. It ends at thou shalt not kill. As long as you're not killing, today it's come down to as long as you're not the man running the slaughterhouse, as long as you're not the one chasing around the headless chicken in your yard, trying to put it in the pot, then you're fulfilling your commandment of thou shalt not kill. So you hire a butcher, you hire a beekeeper, you hire these killers to go ahead and do the slaughtering for you. And you're cool. You're cool, you know. So in looking at this revolution, looking at how they started off, and for the most part, they take their stuff back to Jesus. You know, and Jesus was supposed to have been an Essene. If you look at the Essene religion, you know, on what it means and all of that, you can just look at the book, the Essene Gospel of Peace, and you'll know what they're talking about. You know, you could just look in your Bible and you see, you know, in Genesis, behold, for I've given unto you the seed-yielding foods, and unto you they shall be your meat. Back then, the word meat meant food, not animal flesh. So basically they're telling you the fundamental law of food, of eating, is foods that have seeds, period. If they don't yield seeds, that's it. And they use the apple and the grape as the standard. You know, somebody ate an apple and got into trouble, you know. And today they still got the grape juice they pouring in the church, you know, whatever they call it, communion, or I don't know what the word is. And but basically everything else is pretty much out the window. But even the grape and the apple has been corrupted, you know, full of wax and chemicals and all of these types of stuff. And so there's really not meat anymore, the standard food. So these people, especially we can point out the Seventh-day Adventists, their information came from Helen G. White. She was like the one, you know, the food angel for them. And she wrote a book, you know, Helen G. White, Counsels on Dietetics. So all about raw food, all about plant food. But you look at them today, they have been the main proponents of bastardized plant food. You know, you look at their big headquarters in California, Loma Linda, California. You look at their brands, their canned brands of Loma Linda brand, the Worthington brand, and all of these things, all the gluten and the texturized vegetable protein, thou has not killed, but they're full of chemicals. Anything go, as long as you haven't killed, or even hired the butcher, everything goes. So we see where it's gone today. So this whole thing of this heavy meat eating and to satisfy your B-12, again, is based on this excrement of people who have been eating that kind of way. So you're supposed to replenish what you have, you know, defecated. So you're supposed to eat so much B-12 to get what you need. So now we're in this 21st century situation, and we see, you know, there's lots of updated information that are out here, you know, but just even looking at the Essene Gospel of Peace and looking at that book, looking at the person who wrote this, Zikeli Burlesque or whatever his name is, probably of French origin or something like that. This guy was a complete raw foodist back then. You know, this guy, they built the biggest healing spa resort, you know, in the world at the time, him and his wife. And they had one in California, the Golden Door. It's still around. $5,000 a day to come into the Golden Door to be cleansed and beautified with live food. And they had one across the border because the government hounded them. They went across the border and they set up one. Same like Gerson, you know, Max Gerson set up a clinic across the border, or Raw Food Healing Institute, the Gerson Clinic. And this man has the longest track record of healing cancer, period, of any method, with live food, with sun-fired foods. His wife and daughter followed in his work, in his footsteps. His daughter just passed away within the past 3 years. You know, Charlotte Gerson, now everything is, you know, quiet. Nobody took over. Nobody came in their footsteps. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that if you really want to get the deep healing today of all the schools that teach this, there is the CNM, the College of Natural Medicine in London. You can go in and study in person. That's the best way. Or you do it online from anywhere in the world. Charlotte used to teach there, and her book is still standard on the curriculum there. Of all the teaching institutions that are still around, that still have that old school tradition of healing with food, this is the place. So so you see all this issue about B-12 and all of these types of their journals and things of that nature. So there is a book by Gabriel Cousins. It's The Rainbow Diet. This is a raw food, modern raw food. We're talking, this guy popped up in the 70s, you know, modern raw food movement. Dr. Gabriel Cousins, The Rainbow Diet. In The Rainbow Diet, this medical doctor breaks down the whole issue with the B-12, and that if you are eating all sun-fired foods, and you're not eating any cooked foods, you're not eating any animals, don't worry about having a B-12 deficiency, because you don't need 95%. All you need is 5%. That's all those bodies were able to, all those studies that everybody they did, they only utilized 5% of all those cows that they ate, all those chickens, all those animals that they ate. And the rest, the other 95% came out in the excrement. So you don't need it. So obviously there must be a correlation between the amount of B-12 in the flesh and how it would actually navigate through your system. If they didn't have that massive amount of B-12, there is no way that flesh would come out of your body. It would choke you to death. And we see all the things we have to do to tenderize these things, to make them edible or somewhat digestible. So this man did his scientific research, but unfortunately, in one of his later editions, in his latest editions of the Rainbow Diet, if you find that information in there, he has trumped a lot of it. And he's saying, do your B-12 patch, because you do need it. Do your B-12 supplement, the natural, the raw, the clean B-12 supplement. So here I am, I've come on the scene, getting into all live food in 1976, and I was not sick like him and all of these other people who got into it. They got into it strictly for healing, and for a lot of them it was like their last resort. I got into it based on my culture, my tradition, growing up with my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my parents, and for them it really even wasn't an issue about vegetarianism or not. It was about what can we afford coming out of slavery and what's available to us, and whatever we could grow in our yard, that was our main thing. Whatever little fruit forest, you know, our house was on, we were able to eat plenty off the land. Whatever fish we can get out of the sea, get out of the lake, this is it. So we grew up pretty much with a fresh diet, and coming up with this, I was never into any type of supplements. So getting into this, I just, like, no, I'm not really interested in trying to get no B-12 from anything at all, you know. So I just stuck straight into my roots. And I know from what I've seen with them, how they live, their aging, and seeing what happened based on what's on their plate, I knew I had to clean my plate up, you know. So now, using myself as a lab and not eating any animals now in 54 years, never ever taken any supplements in my life. In spite of this massive B12 deficiency, I don't show any of the signs, any of the symptoms associated with this B12 deficiency. And you could read it, and you could put me to the test. The nerves are supposed to be whacked out. At this, 48 years of no cooked food, no animals for 54 years, no B12, I'm supposed to be a nervous wreck. My brain, my mind should be so forgetful that I can't remember, that, I graduated from elementary school in 1960 in the name of the teacher and all my buddies and everybody that was in there with me. I'm supposed to have forgotten all of that stuff by now at 77, and not, forgetful. You see grandma and grandpa at home, it's like, they'll call cinnamon organic and looking organic. Mixing up their children's name. They're simple stuff, and they grew up with them all these years, and it's like, oh yeah, no, grandma, I am organic. It's not her, stuff. So, borderline Alzheimer's at this age, definitely, but no, it's not there. So I've used myself as a lab. So what I've come down to, and sticking to Gabriel Cousens' principles, basically what I see, what I understand, and what I have proven to myself to be true is that the body can synthesize and produce the equivalent of that 5% B12 that you need. You do it just the way the cows do it. The cows get up in the morning, you see the massive amount of B12 that they produce. They're supposed to be the, master B12 production factory. They're out in the damn sun from the break of dawn, before the sun even comes up. They come and out there waiting to greet the sun, but in the meantime, they're chewing on the grass right away with that morning dew on it. And they're hanging out in the sun. When the sun starts getting blazing at 12 noon, they find a shade, or they find the pond, or they go down to the riverside or to the seaside and they're drinking water. Grass and water and the sunshine, that's all they eat all day long and producing all of this B12. We are capable of synthesizing and producing that small amount of B12 that we need in our intestinal system if our gut is clean. No cooked food. Cooked food decompose, degenerate in the body and is a host for negative bacteria. A gut with negative bacteria cannot harmonize with the sun and produce B12 at all. So that Gabriel Cousens did the research on cooked food, vegan, raw food, vegan, the whole thing. And this is a man who, he's Jewish, rabbi, and the whole thing, and they're supposed to be kosher to the max, and they wanted to make sure and the whole thing, and he's a modern Essene priest and all of this stuff. And then my man Bob, Robert Kuchner, Victoras Kulvinskas, Seeing Eye right now, he's also an Essene priest, and these guys are like, no, Jesus really ate this. Jesus was a Nazarite. The Nazarites, they're all raw foodists. And then you go in and you go to one of my, angels, Rin Berry, who wrote the book, Becoming Raw, who put me in the Oxford Encyclopedia as the father of ethical gourmet raw food cuisine in the world. This man is the vegetarian scribe for the 21st century. This man is the historian of vegetarianism, Rin Berry, a brother born in Hawaii, native of Hawaii, not some white Yankee that moved to Hawaii. He grew up with this in his tradition. Professor at New York University, and became one of my illustrious students, studied with me. and we were shaking, rocking hands like how you see me and Leon now. We, you know, building up that culture together, and this is what we're doing. So we're on different panels speaking about raw foodism and this, and he's dropping the historic stuff. The historic stuff. No, the Essene, when they talked about manna from heaven and loaves of fish. No, look at the Germanic language and look at the definition of those words back then. And it wasn't no loaves of fish. It was loaves of bread, Essene bread, the manna from heaven. And what did the Essene, how did the Essene make their bread? Sprouted wheat. Sprouted wheat, ground and baked in the sun, dehydrated in the sun on a rock, a piece of glass, anything out there that would intensify the heat of the sun. So looking at it from an historical point of view, you know, from the religious point of view, from the scientific point of view, the validation is there. The validation is there.